Hi everyone, as you might have guessed already by the video, today we're going to be building a PC, but not just any PC since it's not really a hardware channel. This computer, this build, is going to be sponsored entirely by the ads that the VPN service companies ran on my video in which I shit on VPN services. I think the irony here is perfect, and yeah, I just want to say to VPN services and to people who clicked on the ads, who bought the subscriptions for those services, thank you a lot. Your support is really helpful, and I'll make sure that your money will not go wasted on that build. So let's go through the components real quick. The CPU that I chose is Ryzen 2600. It's an older model, but I feel like it's going to be enough for gaming and some light video editing. I basically got this bundle, motherboard, CPU, and RAM. This is Trident's G.Skill 3000 MHz RAM. It has RGB, which I'm pretty sure will be very useful in my closed case. But yeah, basically this bundle cost me 220 euros used. I feel like it's a pretty good deal. The motherboard is Gigabyte B450M. For storage, I went with Sabrent's 1TB NVMe drive. Sabrent is kind of not a very well-known company for the storage, but more and more of people I know, some of my friends, some people on the internet have been using those, and it performs really well, so I went with that. For the power supply, I chose Seasonic M12 2 Bronze Evo. Great name, thank you Seasonic. For the graphics card, I chose AMD Radeon RX 5700. This is one of the newer offerings from AMD. I didn't go with NVIDIA because I personally don't like NVIDIA, and I would prefer to keep this build all AMD. And I feel like the 5700 lineup is more competitive, better price than NVIDIA cards that perform similarly, so that's what I went with. And last but not least, I got this case. This is from Cooler Master. Cooler Master Silencio S400. I'm gonna lift it up so that you can see it. This is an M-ATX case, and the thing about this particular case, the reason why I went with it, is because it has sound dampening. Basically, if we remove this top cover, you can see that, I mean, you can't see, but basically you can hear it. This is a special sound dampening material. It's supposed to suppress the noise, and since I'm kind of a silence freak, I like my tech silent. I don't like fan noise. That's what I went with, basically. One of the major complaints about this case online, the kind of stuff that reviewers say about it, is that even though it does have sound dampening, this comes at the price. The case is kind of hotter than M-ATX cases in similar form factor, but this is something I'm ready for. I can live with my hardware running a little bit hotter than it would with similar case, but without sound dampening, but I absolutely can't stand the fan noise. So I hope that's not going to be a problem in this case. So I think I mentioned all the components. This piece is going to be mainly used for gaming and video editing. And yeah, I feel like just looking at the components, it should handle those scenarios, those use cases pretty well. So with that out of the way, let's build it. So before anyone asks why I'm building a PC on a blanket, this is to not damage the table with any sharp corners. This is an IKEA table, very expensive, very valuable. Not sure I will be able to afford another one. So first, let's unpack the motherboard. And the motherboard, as you will see in a minute, already has the CPU installed. That's how it arrived. The seller, I guess, decided to take care of it himself. It comes in this anti-static bag. There we go. This is our Gigabyte motherboard, M-ATX, with the Ryzen 2600 CPU. As usual, we're going to be using everyone's favorite test bench, aka motherboard box. I'm not a professional YouTuber like some of those big guys, so I don't really have a professional test bench or whatever. But I will at least put the motherboard on the anti-static bag, you know, in case some static electricity from the blankets wants to traverse the motherboard. Anyway, let's put in the RAM first. One more thing that I forgot to mention when I was listing the components is the cooler. I'm not, in fact, using the default, the stock Ryzen cooler. I'm using this bad boy. This is Deepcool Gammax 400. Deepcool is kind of a no-name company. Nobody really knows about it. It's not as big as like Cooler Master or Corsair, whatever. But this cooler is actually maybe the best in terms of price-performance ratio. It's pretty good. I've used it on my previous build. Seriously, I have no complaints about it, so that's what I'm going to be using. Since it's not the stock cooler, we will need to put the cooling brackets on this motherboard, since the seller actually shipped the motherboard without them, but luckily I did have some left over my home server build, so let's do it. Okay, well, I think it's time to put the thermal paste and the cooler on then. For the thermal paste, I'll be using my trusty MX4 from Arctic. I do have Thermo Grizzly Cryonaut laying around also, but I don't want to waste it on this PC, since here, like, we're not gonna have any problem with cooling, so I think MX4 will do just fine. So this is what the cooler itself looks like. I think we should just set the motherboard aside and put the AM4 brackets in the cooler. Apart from the screws on the cooler itself, the heatsink and the cooler are basically fixed by friction force. The cooler actually does, as it turns out, come with some thermal solution, but we're not going to use it. Alright, good, let's put some thermal paste on. Hope I didn't bite too much, because I've had experience already with those AM4 coolers that when you take them off, then when you remove them, you have a pretty big chance of actually yanking the CPU out of the socket, and since the pins on the Ryzen CPUs are mounted on the CPU itself, this might cost you a few bent pins, and that's really not something you want. I think that's enough, honestly. Maybe add a little bit more, just in case. Yeah, it should be good. Yeah, got him. Okay. The scariest part is out of the way. Yeah, one more thing that we need to do before we put it in the case is put the SSD drive in. It's possibly the most premium packaging for SSD drive I've seen in a while. It's basically metal. And this is what it looks like. So unfortunately, neither the motherboard nor the SSD came with any M.2 screws, and I'll have to look for screws in my extensive screw collection.
A few moments later.
Oh, never mind, it does actually have the screw. I'm stupid. Okay, so I feel like that part is done, and now it's time to put this bad boy in the case. First we need to put the power supply in, I believe, so let's just unpack this one first. Ooh, a lot of cables. Just look at all those cables, Jesus. I'm really glad that I went with a modular power supply. So otherwise, all those cables will have to be just dangling around and fixed with zip ties and whatnot. I'm pretty sure we have to flip it now, I guess. Once again, I'm not a professional PC builder. I'm not as skilled as the Verge guy, so yeah. I still have no idea why they put those on the motherboard backplate thingy, but honestly. To be honest, I've always had problems with putting those in. I mean, it's like the most difficult part of building a computer. Okay, I think we're in. I think so. Let's try to put the motherboard in. Sorry if at any point my head obstructs the view. Unfortunately, I don't really have the best view of the whole thing here. I think installing this cooler before installing motherboard was a really bad idea. Okay, I think it's time to put the graphics card in.
I'm about to end this man's whole career.
I do think it would be a good idea to put those case wires first. That's what I'm gonna do before putting the graphics card in. Companies that think putting this protective film on a graphics card is a good idea should really burn in hell. The graphics card is finally in. My camera unfortunately gave up on me, so I have to recharge the battery. So that's why I'm filming on my phone right now. So I'm gonna screw this in, put the PCI Express power supply cables in, and see this thing boots. So this is what the final build looks like. I'm personally pretty happy with how it turned out. My PC building skills are kind of rusty, so I do apologize if I did something wrong during the build or made you cringe or whatever. But of course, as with all PC builds, the question is, will it post?
2,000 years later.
So I've been using this build for a few days now, and so far I'm quite pleased with the performance and with everything. After I updated all the drivers and the BIOS, I've had very good experience with it actually. I did, however, run into one problem with this build. The PSU fan was broken and it kind of sounded like this whenever I used my computer. So I had to return this power supply and got this instead. This is Be Quiet System Power 9 500 watts. Unfortunately, it's not a modular power supply, but Be Quiet had a sale on it, pretty good sale. So I got it for cheap and I can't complain. So I'd like to finish this video by showing you guys some benchmarks in some games. In my opinion, the performance in all the games I've tried so far is really good, especially considering the fact that I'm playing in Full HD and not like 1440p or 4K. So yeah, I guess that's about it for this video. And as usual, I would like to thank my patrons for sponsoring my videos: Probit Labs, Ray Piria, Kuju26, Christoph, Mitchell Valentino, and Neurogamer. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.